Hello, I'm Rick Stivers of the Young Martin's Reels, and today we're going to be dealing with this Zebco Omega 1. And if you're seeing this video, that means we've actually managed to get a repair accomplished on it. I still don't know that we're going to accomplish that, but we're going to try to. And I'm going to walk you through. I've been messing with this reel for about 2 days now, and I'll explain to you some of what I've encountered with it. Number one is this screw right here. It's completely chewed up. I thought about trying to take a Dremel tool and trying to re-square the hole off, but there's so much material missing that I don't think that's going to be possible. So what I'm going to do is try to cut a new crossbar across it this way and make it large enough and wide enough to be able to use a regular standard screwdriver, a larger one, and see if I can't get that thing backed out of there. I believe I have a new screw for it. Okay, so let's take the front cover off, which normally in order to do that you have to have the screw loose, but I couldn't. They were already popped off because somebody prior to me had already figured out that they couldn't get those out. So we're going to see if we can get that screw out. Prior to getting to that, my next problem was trying to get this rotor off, or sorry, spinner head. And what was happening, besides this rubber here, I'm going to have to glue this back in. I'll set that over to the side. Okay, what was happening is I couldn't get the rotor to unscrew off of here. No matter how hard I twisted, it just seemed to backtrack everything. So what I tried to do is jam this up with a rag. And I put a rag inside the gears and got it jammed in there real good. Well, when I put enough force to try to break this loose, all of a sudden a loud popping sound came from inside and everything started turning again. And I was like, oh, what have I done now? So I'm going to show you how to go about taking this off without subjecting your gear train to that kind of damage. All right, and now I'm also going to show you what happened inside here, and I still don't know that I'm going to be able to fix that or not. So we're going to take a look at it. Let's go ahead and start off by removing these screws. I'm going to break them loose, and then I think I'm going to use a micro driver to work faster. And if I told you I had all this figured out on my own, I'd be lying. Tommy helped me out with this, helped me figure out what I was looking at and what was going on. It took me a long time just to get all the grease cleaned up out of this thing so I could see what was going on. Okay, there's the gear train out. Now what I have found is wrong. The loud popping sound that I heard was Now, the loud popping sound I heard was this gear right here. And if you look right there, there was a pin right here on the gear, and that gear went into this axle crankshaft right there. And that's what I sheared. I sheared that pin off trying to get that rotor to come loose. And by the way, even doing that, I still did not get the rotor off. So then I still had to try to figure out how to get it removed. So don't try the rag technique with this. It's too fragile. There's just not enough of anything inside that assembly to hold that if it's going to be binding up that tight. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is take this brake off over here. And I found the easiest way to do that, let's take the rest of those out, is to press this up and slide a number 2 Phillips screwdriver in right there, and that will hold the brake assembly and keep it from popping in. Okay, once you've done that, you can take your screwdriver, push down and over, and that will come off. Okay, once that's off, take that last spring out. All right, that's got us to this point. Let me go ahead and remove that screwdriver. Now, if we get back over here, what we want to do is we're going to compress this spring. Now, there's not a whole lot of compression in this spring. It's a very short spring. Look at how short this thing is. Okay, and there's not a lot of compression there. But what we do need to do is get it compressed down enough to be able to get this C-clip off right here. So even compressed all the way right there, it's not enough. There. Okay, so what I ended up doing was compressing from the very top, pressing it down, and taking that clip out, which is not an easy task. Okay, try not to do what I just did, shooting the spring. There's the washer, there's that. Now I just got to find the spring again. All right, and there's the spring. Now once you've done that, pull this little sleeve off, and now that can come out like that. With that off, you can grab hold of this with a pair of pliers or vice grips and hold it nice and firm, and then you can unscrew that off of there without damaging your gear train. All right? That's what I have found to be the best way to do that. Now I'm going to show you on camera, me with my Dremel tool, trying to fix this and see if we can get that screw out. If I can get the screw out, and if the new screw from the other one, from that 600 I've got over there, will fit this, then we'll be well enough along that I will make the attempt to repair that axle shaft. All right, I'm going to give that a try. There we go. Okay, now I'm hoping that that's the same screw that's going to be in the 600. All right, when I come back, I either will or will have not had any success getting this drilled and a new pin put in it. I'm not sure how well that's going to work out. As fun as all this has been, tearing this thing apart, I've decided that it's in rough enough condition that it's not worthy of being repaired. I'm going to show you some of the problems that I found. One of them is on this drag assembly. Somebody has taken a pair of pliers or vice grips or something. At one time, I'm assuming that this was jammed on here, and their method of removal was to grab hold of that with a pair of vice grips or something and try to twist it off, and they've chewed that whole thing up. So I could probably file it down, but you got that damage. You get these parts in here, they work, they're functional, but they're bent a little bit here and there. So that's not good. I did have to push one of the pins out because the pin wasn't meeting correctly. One of the washers for the anti-reverse over here is completely hollowed out. I believe that's supposed to be a D-shaped washer just like this one, and it's worn out. And that still brings us back to this pin. I was able to get the pin out of the gear, but I was not able to drill this pin out of the shaft. So I have decided to turn this into a parts reel and retire it. I don't know when I'll be airing this video at all, but or if ever. But there was the Zebco Omega 1. I originally, after spending 2 days with this thing, really hated it. And talking to Tommy, he suggested a few things and talked to me about how this was made. And once I understood how it was made, I understood what was wrong and what was happening. And at least I was able to interpret what's going on. Had I taken this apart the way I showed you here, had I taken it apart that way, it would have not sheared this pin, and I'd still have some worn parts here and there, but the reel was possibly usable that way. But I'm going to retire it. This piece is broken. If I find another axle shaft assembly, I may pull it out of retirement. But even then, with the axle shaft, I'd still want to do something with this drag knob assembly. So it's for now, I'm going to be bagging this one and putting it away with the rest of the parts reels. Tommy did convince me that it's actually a pretty nice reel. I was thoroughly convinced that it was an absolute piece of junk when I was first starting on it. I've come to the conclusion that it's not a half bad reel after all. So I'm going to stick a little bit of this back together so that I know how it goes when I put it in the bag. But it's done for now. Anyway, that's Rick Stivers with Young Martin's Reels, signing out. Okay, if you thought you'd never see the end of this reel and see it back together again, well, I've got a surprise for you. It actually is coming back. I believe I can get it back together now. I think I have the parts. First thing we're going to work on is getting this brake assembly glued back together. I'm going to use rubber cement right along this inside edge. Now the next thing I'm going to do, that took care of that part easy enough. I think I'm going to use a cotton swab for putting the glue on this. By the way, both of these parts are just cleaned with acetone to make sure that I got all the old greases and oils off prior to putting this rubber cement on. And we're going to put this on and let it sit for a few minutes in order to allow the rubber cement to set. All right, and it's already starting to set, I can see. And while that's curing up, I'm going to go ahead and clean up all these parts and have them ready to assemble. By the way, the part that was broken on this, if you have, I don't remember where we were on the video, but this pin had sheared off right here. I was able to get the pin out of the gear and right here, but I was unable to get it out of the shaft, and I broke 2 drill bits trying to drill it out. And so I had given up and decided that I was going to turn this into a parts reel. And I was contacted by Jim, and Jim asked me if I needed the part, and I said yeah, and I was going to have him send it to me. But he reminded me that I had a whole bunch of parts sitting down there in a box, and I had already looked through it once, but I was looking for one that looked like this. This is what I was looking for, and it's bright silver, so I was looking for a nice aluminum gear set, and I didn't see any. And I needed to look a little deeper because they also made them in brass, and this was the brass gear, and I had one. So I was able to get it, find it, and get it so that nobody has to send me one, and we don't have to turn this into a parts reel or anything. Also, the cam lobe right here for the drag is chewed horribly up. It looks like somebody grabbed it with vice grips. And that was the other thing that was going to parts reel this. But it turns out that when I found one, it was just like this, had a good cam lobe in it for the drag star. It's got the brass gear instead of the aluminum gear, but it's in excellent condition. I did have to swap out the washers for the end of it. And what I ended up doing was putting 2 of these pointers in here, as I only had 1 washer. So instead of having 2 washers and 1 pointer, instead I went with 1 washer and 2 pointers, which it looks like it's going to work just fine doing that. So we're going to scrub all these parts up and see if we can't get this reel put back together. All right, parts have been cleaned, and we've given this plenty of time for this to cure. So let's see if we can manage to get this brake ring stuck in here properly so that it seats fully. And that should take care of it. It should never fall out again. Oh, it's not in all the way. Nope. I didn't get it in all the way. It's stuck sideways. There. That got it back in there. Let's see if it's firmly in. It is, and it's not coming back out. All right. That brake ring's ready to go. Matter of fact, I think I'm going to put that in before I put anything else in, just so that I don't forget it later. Okay, let's go ahead. I have a bad habit of trying to put these in after I've put the spool on. If you guys watching my videos long enough, you'll notice that I do things like that periodically. And this one's really tight. It doesn't just fall out, so I think it's going to be just fine right there. So let's put that in. Next, we're going to take a look at the pinion gear. And this pinion gear has a bearing on the front of it. And I don't know if you can see here, but as I rotate this around, if you look very carefully, there's a little super thin C-clip right there. Well, I have been unable to get that C-clip to pop off there, and I got to thinking about it, and I said, you know what? That C-clip's not hurting anybody. All it's doing is holding this bearing on, and the bearing is not a sealed bearing. It's a shielded bearing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and lubricate that bearing right where it sits without taking it out. I'm going to spin it around a few times so that the oil will penetrate the shield. And that's really about all that's going to need. When I do, I'm going to grease the pinion, and when I do, I'm going to come back around on this side and I'm going to oil the bearing again from this side, because most of the time that we're going to have this reel sitting here during servicing, it's going to be with this side being the upside. So let's go ahead and grease the bearing. All right, now I'm going to come back and flood this bearing one more time with oil. I'm going to spin it again, and now it's going to sit right down inside here. Make sure it goes all the way down. Once it's down all the way, you can take this tab right here and move it over so that it holds the bearing in place so the bearing can't fall out. That's all that takes. The next thing we're going to do is reinstall the axle shaft while there's plenty of room here to do it. So we're going to take the axle shaft itself. I'm going to go ahead and grease this. Normally, rotating surfaces I oil, but there's been a lot of wear in this poor reel. Now, if you look, see these 2 pins right here? Can you see them in the video? Right here, there at the top. They're going to fit into 2 notches right here inside the headpiece. And when you slide this in, they're going to drop down, rotate it around until they fall into that. And that way you'll know that you've got it in the right place. Once you've done that, sit this down in this position. And this is where we're going to come back. We're going to install this little sleeve right here. Then we're going to slide on this spring. And now this is where things start to get a little bit hairy, because what we have to do is take this little washer, put it back on there, slide it down enough to be able to put this C-clip on, or E-clip, whichever one you want to call it. So you've got to be able to get this down far enough, like so, to hold it in place. Put the washer on, like so. Then you got to come back and put the C-clip on. And you got to get it on there straight. And it can help. Okay, the whole thing's starting to slide up on me. My fingernail's starting to collapse. There we go. E-clips in. It's all reinstalled, snapped in place, ready to go. I'm hoping you were able to see that. Next, we're going to put this gear back in that I have managed to find to replace the old one with. I'm going to grease up this shaft. I would think that this would come all the way off, but I've been unable to get it to do so. So I'm not going to force it. I've already broken one of these shafts. I don't intend to break this one as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a little grease down inside this end over here. And we'll work that in around until it all feels nice and smooth, which it now does. I managed to get all the grit and stuff out of there. I sprayed it down several times with WD-40 to try to make sure it was clean inside, and I believe it is now. All right, once you got it here, we're going to put this sleeve on. The large end here fits up against the gear like so. Now, the way this is supposed to be is there's supposed to be two. Let me set it down here on the surface so that hopefully you can see it. There should be two of these D-center shaped washers that go on here, and one of these. All right. Well, I don't have two of the between the two of these that I had, I managed to come up with one good washer. All the rest of them had been worn out to look like that. Just completely worn out. So we eliminated those out of the factor. And what I'm going to do is we're going to put the D-shaped washer on. And there's a flat spot on the shaft that you want that washer to go over. And I managed to get it out of whack. There we go. Let's put the D over so that it slides all the way down like that. And pick it up so you can see. All right, that washer is going to fit all the way down. Once you've done that, you should be putting on one of these, and then you should be putting another D-shaped washer, but I don't have another one, so I'm going to use the second one of these that I had just to take up the space, because this has to fit fairly snug. If it doesn't fit snug, what happens is it just spins on the shaft. All right, there's our C-clip installed. Okay, there's a bit of resistance there, which is what you want. You want a little bit of resistance on that. All right. Now, this is going to be installed. When it does, this point right here has got to go inside that slot right there. Okay, this slot moving back and forth is moved by that pin, and that's what activates your anti-reverse right here. So let's see if we can get this installed. Set it down in there. I'm missing the slot so far. You might have to maneuver things around a little bit to get everything to go where you want it to be. Okay, everything's down in there. All right, now if we turn this, it activates the anti-reverse. All right, we're going to put oil on this. I don't want to use grease on it because I think grease would create too much resistance and cause the anti-reverse to bind and not do what it's supposed to do. See how that works? Okay. Now with that done, we're down to the tedious work, which is going to be putting these little plates back in. All right, this is a very easy gear to grease once you've got it installed. A lot of gears become difficult once they're installed. This one is not one of them. All right, let's see what we got here. See how smooth it turns with a new gear installed. Oh yeah. Anti-reverse is working, watch it. Everything's working as advertised. Let's go ahead and leave that in place. I'll put the nut on. Okay, let's back up the drag to as loose as possible. Okay, let's see. All right, that should push in at that point. Oh. All right, when I first got this spinner head, everything looked normal on it to me. I was able to get full motion on the pins and everything. Everything seemed to do what it was supposed to do. But when I would put it on the reel itself and spin it around, what was happening is the one pin would come out and the other one would not. And I put it on several times and I adjusted and I lubricated and everything else. And it took me a while to figure out what was going on. And what was happening is one of these two pins, see the white pins? They're clamped in these clamps right here. Well, one of them had slid back about, well, the amount of distance that it normally sticks out. And so what was happening is when it would crank down and the lid would come down, one would pop out and the other one would be just about flush, even though inside this part was landing right back where it belonged. So it took me a little bit to figure that out. And the only thing I had to do to fix that was put a screwdriver on the end of the white shaft and push it back out. And that took care of it. All right, in case you run into one that's doing that, that's an easy fix for it. Now we've set our drag to the lowest setting, which pushes this bar all the way down. Once we've done that, we can slide the spool on right here, like so. Then we take our drag bar, our drag washer, slide it in place, line it up to where it's lining up with the notches, and then it'll be time to slide this back on. Like so. Once you've got it on there, make sure that this bar doesn't rotate. It has to be in those notches, which it is. All right. Now, does the spool? Yes. And the reason it does now, and that's the clicker for the drag. That's good. Then I go ahead and adjust your drag down nice and tight and make sure that the spool locks in place, and it does. Let's go back the other way, loosen it up. Does its spools move? And does it move freely? Yes, it does. All right. Now we're ready to reinstall our brake bar. And this is where I used that number 2 Phillips to take it apart. I'm going to use the same thing to put it back together. We're going to slide that number 2 Phillips into the spool like that so that the brake bar can't push in. These 2 springs are supposed to be attached right there. And if you need to slightly bend that to make them tight, to make them stay on, you can do that, but you got to be really, really careful that you don't bend it too far. So, very, very small amounts should you bend that. Okay, so it'll stay on. That one still ain't very tight. This one's trying my patience with that hole. You don't want to squeeze it very tight thing, because you don't. There we go. That one got it. There we go. Now those will stay on. Okay, and what we're going to do, I got to try to do this where you can see it. I want to zoom in a little bit. I hope I remember to unzoom. You guys all start yelling at the camera, don't forget to unzoom, don't forget to unzoom. Okay, there's a post in here that this spring fits on. So get it down in here. Let's go ahead, slide that one in. That was easy, but it's not on the post when we put it in. Okay, it's just in there. And what I'm going to do is take my screwdriver and lift the spring up a little bit to get it up onto the post. Like that. All right, and then we're going to come over to the other side. You got to hold this in place or it's going to fall off. And now on the other side, this one has jumped onto the post. And we are going to put the screwdriver on this side now to hold that in. Hang on, what's going on? Right there, like so. Okay. All right, this one has already slid back off of the post now on this end. There we go, it's back on. And we're going to push the brake bar arm, or the brake assembly arm over enough. There we go, snapped in. The brake bar is now installed, the springs are held. There you go. There's your brake bar. Now that we've done that, it's time to screw the spinner head back on. And let's see how she runs. And I had to remember to back out, and we are. There we go. And let's go ahead, and we're going to put the rear brake on. And I'm going to pause for a second. All right, I'm back. I had to go raid my piggy bank and come up with some coins. And what I want to find out, I've always been told that this slot right here was made for a coin. And so I decided I wanted to find out what coin fitted the best. Okay, a dime is not a good fit. Let's try the penny. Penny is not a good fit. I really would have thought the penny would be. Nickel is still a little shallow. All right, the quarter seems to be the best, and I'm really wondering if a $50 might be better. But of these coins, the quarter seems to be the best fit. So we're going to use the quarter right now to back this off. We're going to make sure that that's going to fit in there, and it is. I'll put the back cover back on, like so. Slide it into place. And at this time, I'm not going to tighten that down until we get the front back on. All right, but what we do want to see is if the spinner head is operating properly. Okay, both pins are coming out. There we go. There's nothing wrong with the way that's operating. Okay. And let's see if we can get some of the line out of there. Okay, fans, there we have it. The Zebco Omega 1. There's the drag. It winds in just fine. I can tighten that drag down more. Tighten it some more. Yep, you can tighten it down till you bust the line. That's plenty tight. All right. And the last thing to do, well, almost the last thing to do, is tighten down the screw. These screws are not made for a screwdriver. Screwdriver will tear them up quickly. I think I'm going to make a screwdriver, though, that's got the rounded bottom to fit that. All right, there you've got the Zebco Omega 1 back from the dead because it was going into the parts pile, and it has recovered. The anti-reverse works, the wind works, the button release, everything's working on it. It's ready to go out fishing again as soon as it gets some new line on it. So if you like what you saw, if you like the revival of this poor reel, hit the like button. If you didn't like it or didn't like something I did or don't like how I'm filming or whatever, hit the dislike button and you can do that. And please, though, if you do, give me a comment. Let me know what it is I'm messing up that you don't like. And if you'd like to see further videos like this in the future, by all means, hit the subscribe button and we will proceed on. For now, that's Rick Stivers with Young Martin's Reels, signing out.